They say every marriage begins with love and ends with silence. But mine didn't end in silence. It ended in noise. Noise from a crowded club, from my husband's broken voice, and from the sound of my own world collapsing. But before that night, before everything went wrong, I was Nancy, a woman who thought she had everything figured out. Jake and I had been together for 6 years, married for 5. We met at a wedding, cliché, I know. He was quiet, the kind of man who didn't need to dominate a room. There was something solid about him, calm eyes, kind smile, the type who listens before speaking. He wasn't flashy, but he was dependable, and when you're in your late 20s and ready to build a life, dependability feels like love. When we got married, I truly believed I'd found my forever. We built our home together, not just a house, but a rhythm, morning coffees, shared playlists, arguments about grocery lists, lazy Sunday breakfasts. He made me laugh without even trying. And when I got promoted at work, he celebrated harder than I did. He always said he was proud of me. Maybe that's where it started, not the cheating, but the imbalance. Jake was a software engineer, steady, logical, predictable. I was in marketing, chaotic, always chasing deadlines, campaigns, clients, presentations. Our worlds were different, but in the beginning it worked.
He grounded me.
I inspired him. But life doesn't stay balanced forever. When I became marketing director at my company, everything changed. More meetings, more travel, more responsibility. At first, Jake was supportive. He'd cook for me when I returned from work trips, draw baths, listen to me vent about clients and colleagues. He never complained. And that was the problem, he never said anything. He thought being the good husband meant staying quiet. But silence becomes heavy when you're the only one talking. I'd come home excited about a new project or exhausted after a long week, and he'd just nod, smile, say he was proud of me. After a while, it didn't feel like support, it felt like distance disguised as kindness. Then came Ronnie. I met him at a business conference in Chicago. He was a consultant, confident, sharp, the kind of man who made you feel like the only person in the room. We started talking during a networking dinner. It began innocently, industry talk, campaign strategies, client challenges. But he made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in years. He asked questions Jake never asked anymore. Do you still paint? Do you still run in the mornings? Things Jake had stopped noticing, because I'd stopped mentioning them. When the dinner ended, Ronnie walked me back to my hotel lobby. We didn't touch. We didn't flirt. But when he said, "You seem lonely for someone so successful," it felt like he'd read a page from my diary. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because for the first time in a long time, someone saw me. The next morning, Ronnie texted, "Safe flight back, Nancy?" It was harmless. Or at least that's what I told myself. I replied. And just like that, a line I didn't even realize existed was crossed. Weeks passed. Our texts became longer. We started sharing small frustrations, inside jokes, pictures of coffee cups, sunsets, airplane views. It wasn't physical, not yet. But emotionally, I was already slipping. Jake didn't notice. Or maybe he did, but didn't want to see it. When I laughed at my phone one night, he smiled and asked, "Good day at work?" I nodded and kissed his cheek. That moment should have stopped me, but instead, it made me ache. Because even in that simple gesture, I felt how far apart we'd drifted. The first time I lied to Jake was a Tuesday. Ronnie had texted saying he'd be in the same city for a client meeting and asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I said yes, then told Jake I had a late strategy call. I remember my hands shaking while typing that message. Not because I felt guilty, but because I didn't. We met at a cafe near the river. He wore a navy suit, sleeves rolled up, the kind of effortless charm that comes from confidence. We talked for hours. When I realized I'd missed 3 of Jake's calls, I panicked. Ronnie smiled and said, "You don't owe anyone an explanation for wanting a break." That line stayed with me longer than I'd admit. The coffee turned into lunch the next week. Lunch turned into dinners when we were both on business trips. And somewhere between airports and hotel lobbies, my loyalty dissolved quietly. The first time we kissed was in Seattle, after a client presentation. He walked me to my room, said goodnight, and I don't know who leaned in first. I only remember the silence after, the kind that felt like both a confession and a curse. That night, I stared at the ceiling, crying quietly so my roommate wouldn't hear. I told myself it was a mistake, that I'd stop, that I still loved Jake. But love and loneliness can coexist, and that's the most dangerous thing. For months, I lived two lives. The perfect wife at home, the ambitious executive on the road, and somewhere in between, a woman losing herself. Ronnie and I began timing our business trips together. If I was scheduled for Chicago, he'd happen to have meetings there too. When Jake called, I'd lower my voice, talk about conference calls and client dinners that didn't exist. The lies came easier than I ever thought they could. Jake's trust made it worse. He never questioned my stories, never checked my location, never doubted me. He'd text, "Miss you, can't wait till you're back." And I'd reply, "Me too, baby." Then turn to Ronnie lying next to me and whisper, "Give me a second." It was messed up. But when you're caught in something like that, logic doesn't matter. Only feelings do. And I felt alive with Ronnie. He made me feel desired again, like the world hadn't gone flat and routine. One night, after a week in Denver, I came home to find Jake had decorated the dining room with candles and flowers. He'd cooked dinner, even bought my favorite wine. He said, "Just wanted to celebrate you." And as I smiled, guilt punched me so hard I nearly choked on my breath. I couldn't even eat, because all I could think about was the lipstick stain on my suitcase handle, not from that night but from the one before. I told Ronnie I wanted to stop, that it was getting too complicated. He didn't argue. He just said, "You know where to find me when you stop lying to yourself." And that sentence haunted me. I tried to fix things with Jake after that. Tried to reconnect, movie nights, weekend getaways, long talks about us. But it was too late. He sensed something, even if he didn't say it. There was a distance in his eyes, a question he was too scared to ask. Then came Marcus's birthday, the night that destroyed everything. I told Jake I was going to Portland for a 3-day conference. It wasn't entirely a lie. There was a conference, but I wasn't attending it. Ronnie had flown into my city for a few days, and we decided to spend the weekend together. He booked a room downtown. We planned dinner, drinks, maybe dancing. We thought no one would ever know. Fate, it turns out, loves irony. That night, we went to a new club called Apex. The lights, the music, the crowd. It was loud enough to drown every thought. Ronnie kissed me on the dance floor, and for a fleeting second, I forgot everything, my husband, my guilt, my lies. It was just adrenaline, passion, escape. Until I opened my eyes and saw Jake, standing across the club, frozen, looking at me like I'd just stabbed him. When people talk about the moment everything changed, they make it sound poetic, like the universe whispers something profound before shattering your life. But there's no whisper. There's just noise and panic, and the slow, sinking realization that you can't take it back. That night, I thought I was safe. Ronnie and I had checked into a downtown hotel, just a few miles from my home. It was stupid, reckless, I know that now, but at the time it felt thrilling. A weekend getaway disguised as a business trip. We got dressed up and headed to Apex, a brand new club everyone was talking about. It was loud, crowded, full of strangers, the perfect place to disappear. The air smelled of perfume, alcohol, and neon lights. I remember thinking, no one here knows me. I was wrong. Ronnie had his arm around my waist, his breath warm against my ear as he whispered something stupid that made me laugh. And then I saw him. Jake. At first, my mind refused to process it. The lighting was dim, strobe lights flashing, but that silhouette, broad shoulders, familiar stance, it was him. My chest tightened. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was supposed to be home, maybe watching TV, maybe asleep. But when our eyes met across the crowd, I knew it was real. His expression wasn't anger at first. It was confusion, a slow, dawning horror spreading across his face like a crack in glass. And then I saw realization hit him like lightning. I froze. The music kept playing, people kept dancing, but everything around me blurred. I wanted to move, to explain, to hide, but my legs wouldn't work. And before I could react, Jake was pushing through the crowd, his jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on me. Ronnie turned, still oblivious, still smiling. Then Jake's voice cut through the noise. Cold. Sharp. Nancy. My name, my real name, sounded foreign on his lips. For a moment, even Ronnie looked confused. Then Jake was there, just a few feet away, his face pale, hands trembling, fury barely contained. Jake. I started, but he cut me off. Portland, right? That's where you said you were? People had started turning toward us now. The music didn't stop, but the space around us widened. It felt like the entire room was holding its breath. Ronnie stepped forward, hands up slightly, like he was calming a client. Hey man, relax. Jake's fist connected with Ronnie's jaw before the sentence even finished. The sound was awful, a sharp, wet crack, followed by gasps and chaos. Ronnie stumbled backward, crashing into a table, spilling drinks and sending glasses shattering across the floor. I screamed, Jake, stop. But it was useless. Security was already pushing through the crowd. I tried to reach for Jake, to explain, to stop whatever was happening, but he looked at me with eyes so full of pain I couldn't breathe. Don't touch me, he said, his voice breaking in a way I'd never heard before. The man I'd loved for years, the one who used to hold me through storms, who used to whisper goodnight like a promise, now looked at me like I was a stranger. No, worse than that. Like I was the enemy. Ronnie was on the ground, clutching his face, cursing. Security grabbed Jake by the arm, trying to pull him back. Then his best friend appeared out of nowhere, shouting, trying to calm him. People had their phones out. They were recording. Every second of my humiliation, every tear, every broken word, captured forever. Jake, please, I sobbed, reaching for him. Let me explain. Explain, he snapped. Explain what? That your conference room has a dance floor? That your client meetings end with kissing some stranger? It's not.
Don't, he said again.
Don't say another word. And just like that, he turned away. No more shouting, no more anger. Just cold silence. That silence hurt more than the yelling ever could. Security escorted him out. I stood there trembling, mascara running, surrounded by strangers filming me like I was a spectacle. Ronnie touched my arm and said something. I don't even remember what. All I remember is pulling away. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't Jake I was angry at. It was myself. The next few hours are a blur. Ronnie tried to talk to me, to make sense of what happened, but I couldn't focus. I left the club without even saying goodbye. When I reached the hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my reflection. My lipstick was smudged, my hair tangled, my eyes red. I didn't look like myself. I looked like the kind of woman I used to judge, pathetic, deceitful, lost. I called Jake. Straight to voicemail. Then again. Nothing.
Texted him.
Jake, please. I'm so sorry. Please come home. Please talk to me. No reply. By the time morning came, I had left 21 missed calls and more messages than I could count. I drove home, praying he'd be there, that we could fix this somehow. When I opened the door, the house was silent. Too silent. His things were gone, not all, but enough. No car in the driveway. No shoes by the door. Just emptiness. On the kitchen table, there was an envelope. My name written in his handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Nancy. By the time you read this, I'll have already called a lawyer. Don't contact me. Don't come by the office. Don't send me apologies. The papers will be handled formally. You've made your choices. Now I'm making mine. Jake. My knees gave out. I sat on the kitchen floor, clutching the letter like it could somehow undo itself. The same kitchen where we'd made pancakes, where we'd planned our future. Now it was just another room full of ghosts.
I don't know how long I sat there.
Minutes, hours, maybe days. All I know is that when I finally looked up, the light coming through the window was gone. I thought about driving to his friend Ben's place. I knew that's where he'd gone, but I couldn't face him. Not yet. Because what could I say? I'm sorry? That sounded too small for the devastation I'd caused. Ronnie called later that night. He asked if Jake was okay. I almost laughed. Jake? He didn't even ask how I was. And that's when it hit me. Ronnie wasn't my escape. He was my excuse. The next morning, I got an email from Jake's lawyer. It was short, polite, professional. A meeting request to discuss divorce proceedings. No emotion. Just formality. And that somehow hurt the most. Over the next few weeks, I moved through life like a ghost. I went to work, smiled in meetings, pretended everything was fine. But the whispers started. Someone had seen the club video on social media. People always find out. The looks, the pity, the silent judgment. It was unbearable. Ronnie tried to keep in touch at first. He said he felt bad for what happened, that he cared about me. But then he stopped replying as often. Calls went unanswered. Texts left unread. And eventually nothing. Just silence again. Jake filed the papers quickly. I didn't contest anything. What could I fight for? The house? The marriage? The trust I'd already destroyed? I signed everything, sent it back, and watched my life dissolve one signature at a time. The day the movers came, I packed quietly. The house felt smaller somehow, like the walls were rejecting me. I found one of Jake's shirts in the closet. I pressed it to my face, trying to breathe him in, but it didn't smell like him anymore. It smelled like emptiness. When I left, I placed my house key on the kitchen counter, next to where his letter had been. And before walking out, I whispered, "I'm sorry," even though no one was there to hear it. That night, I stayed in a rented apartment on the other side of town. No pictures on the walls. No warmth. Just silence. The kind I used to crave, but now couldn't bear. I thought about Jake, what he must be feeling, what he must be saying to his friends. Probably nothing. He wasn't the type to gossip or seek pity. He'd just move on quietly, gracefully, leaving me to drown in the noise I'd created. And the worst part? He deserved to. They say time heals everything. I used to believe that. Now, I know time doesn't heal. It just teaches you how to live with the scars. After Jake left, my life didn't fall apart in one big explosion. It crumbled slowly, like watching paint peel from the walls of a house you once called home. Every day, another piece of the old me vanished. At first, I convinced myself I could fix it, that if I gave him space, he'd calm down, that maybe one day he'd pick up the phone and we'd talk like adults, like the couple who used to solve everything together. But he never did. Not once. His silence was louder than any argument. And the truth was, I didn't deserve even a word from him. The divorce went through quietly. No fights, no drama, just paperwork, lawyers, signatures. When I signed the final document, my hands were shaking so hard I had to steady the pen. I kept thinking of the promises we made on our wedding day. Till death do us part. But it hadn't been death that parted us. It was me. Ronnie disappeared soon after. For a while, he pretended to care. He called a few times, said things like, "You'll get through this," or "I'm sorry it turned out this way." But I could feel the distance growing with every conversation. He didn't want guilt. He wanted fun, and I wasn't fun anymore. The last message he ever sent was 3 words. "Take care, Nancy." That was it. No goodbye, no closure, just the digital version of walking away. After that, I was truly alone. I stopped going out, stopped seeing friends, stopped answering calls from people who wanted to check in. Because no matter how kindly they spoke, I could see it in their eyes, the mix of pity and judgment. Some of them had seen the video from that night at Apex. Yes, someone had uploaded it online. It made its way around my social circle like wildfire. A woman crying, begging, surrounded by strangers with phones. That was me. At work, it was worse. People whispered when I entered the room. The story had spread. The marketing director caught cheating, divorce, scandal. I tried to keep my head high, but every presentation, every meeting, felt like a courtroom. Eventually, I stopped pretending. I resigned. I told HR it was for personal reasons, but everyone knew the truth. You can't lead a brand when your own name is stained. The apartment I moved into was small, one bedroom, one couch, one life. At night, the silence was unbearable. I'd wake up reaching for Jake, still expecting him to be there. The first few times, I'd cry myself back to sleep. After a while, I stopped crying. Not because I was okay, but because I was empty. I tried therapy. The therapist asked me, "Why do you think you cheated?" At first, I said what every guilty person says. I felt neglected. But the more I talked, the more I realized how hollow that sounded. Jake didn't neglect me. He trusted me. He believed in me completely, and I used that trust like a weapon. The truth? I cheated because I wanted validation. Because I wanted to feel seen, admired, desired. Things that had nothing to do with Jake and everything to do with my own insecurities. I had everything I claimed to want: love, stability, respect, but I wanted more. And that hunger destroyed me. Months passed. One by one, the people who once filled my life disappeared. Friends stopped calling. My parents were disappointed, though they never said it outright. Mom would just sigh and say, "Everyone makes mistakes, Nancy. But some mistakes cost too much." She was right. I started seeing a therapist regularly. She helped me unpack the guilt, the shame, the endless loop of what-ifs. She said something that stuck with me. You can't rebuild your life until you stop mourning the version of yourself that caused the damage. It took me months to understand that. I kept looking back, wishing I could undo things, go back to that night at the conference, say no to Ronnie's message, stop myself from walking into that club. But you can't rewrite your own story. You can only live with the ending you created. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Ronnie again, accidentally, at an industry event. He looked different, sharper, colder. He was with another woman. He smiled politely like I was a distant colleague. And for the first time, seeing him didn't hurt. It just felt meaningless. That night, I went home and deleted every photo, every message, every trace of him. Not out of anger, just to free myself. Because holding on to pieces of that affair felt like keeping ashes in a jar. A year later, life had quieted. I got a new job, smaller company, less glamour, less travel. I started running again, cooking for myself, reading books I never had time for. Some days, I still felt the weight of what I'd lost. But other days, I could breathe without guilt. And that was progress. Then one afternoon it happened. I was at a small coffee shop downtown, the kind of place Jake and I used to visit on lazy Sundays. I'd ordered a latte, sat near the window, and pulled out my laptop. When I looked up, he was there.
Jake.
He was standing at the counter, ordering coffee, wearing that same calm expression that used to comfort me. But there was something different about him now, something lighter.
He looked happy.
My heart stuttered. For a moment, I thought about leaving before he saw me. But fate had other plans. He turned. Our eyes met. He hesitated, just for a second, then walked toward me. I stood up. "Hi," I said softly. "Hi," he replied, his tone polite but distant. "You look good," I said, because I couldn't think of anything else. He smiled slightly. "Thanks. You too." There was a pause, long, heavy, but not uncomfortable. I wanted to tell him everything, that I was sorry, that I'd learned, that I wished him happiness. But none of those words felt right. They all sounded small compared to what I'd done. "How are you?" I finally asked. "Good," he said, and I believed him. There was peace in his voice, something genuine. "I got a dog. His name's Max." I smiled. "That sounds like you." He nodded. Silence again. Then he looked at me. Not with anger, not with love, but with the kind of neutrality that only comes when a wound has completely healed. "I hope you're doing okay," he said. "I'm trying," I replied. He nodded once more, picked up his coffee, and said quietly, "Take care, Nancy." And just like that, he walked out. No drama. No closure speech. Just calm finality. I watched him leave, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. Because I realized something: he wasn't my punishment anymore. He was my lesson. That night, I sat by my window, looking out at the city lights, and thought about everything that had happened. The affair, the lies, the collapse, the pain. It all felt like a different lifetime. I wasn't that woman anymore. I don't know if Jake ever forgave me. Maybe he did, silently. Maybe he never will. But that's okay. Because forgiveness isn't something I can demand from him. It's something I have to give myself, one day at a time. I've learned that love isn't about excitement or validation. It's about presence. And when you stop being present in your own marriage, when you start looking elsewhere for what's missing inside you, you're already halfway gone. Sometimes I imagine what life would have been like if I hadn't gone to that first conference. If I hadn't answered Ronnie's message. If I'd just looked Jake in the eyes one night and said, "I feel lonely." Maybe everything would have been different. Maybe not. But I can't live in the what-ifs anymore. All I can do is carry the truth. That I had a good man who loved me deeply. That I broke that love. And that I'll spend the rest of my life making sure I never become that version of myself again. They say the worst day of your life can also be the day you start to rebuild. And maybe they're right. Because the night Jake caught me wasn't the end of my story. It was the end of my illusion. He walked away and built a better life. And I stayed behind to learn what honesty really costs. A year later, I'm not the same woman who lied about business trips and fake meetings. I'm quieter now. Humbler. Wiser, maybe. I still wear my wedding ring sometimes, not as a sign of love, but as a reminder of who I was, of what I lost, and of what truth feels like when it finally sets you free. Because sometimes losing everything isn't punishment. It's redemption.